the idea of ripping up ballast and track fills a lot of people with a great deal of trepidation. And what I'm going to aim to show here is that I can insert a crossover like this into a pre-existing scenic layout. Hi there everyone, I hope I find you well. It is really great to see you and well, welcome back to the Loft here on Weir Yard. I'm Jennifer Kirk and today we're going to be doing a project build. It's progress on the Loft layout and I'm going to be showing you the little project which I came up with for Weir Yard. Now this has been addressing one of the little flaws that I think everybody's afflicted by this. When they build a model layout, they find later on as they progress with the build, they get it running, they think actually that track would have been better going slightly differently, or maybe a little linking junction in a particular place might actually massively add to operational interest if only you'd have thought of it when you were laying the track and before you ballasted it. Well, actually all is not lost, and today's little project I'm going to be taking a look at just how easy it is to insert a whole junction fully functional with point motors and all into pre-existing and actually pre-ballasted track. Can I make this work, and more importantly, can I make it fit in with the scenery that's already there? Well, come with me and I'll show you just how well I did manage to do. But before we take a look at that video, don't forget to check out our merch, which is listed down below, and you too can pick up an amazing t-shirt or hoodie with one of our great designs. This is the area of Weir Yard that I'm going to be working on today in this video, and it's one of those things that actually I think a lot of people find when they build a big layout like Weir Yard, is that no matter how carefully you plan things, there comes to light with regular operation certain things where you think, actually I could have done with some extra point work there, or just change the layout of a junction. And I think a lot of people, the idea of ripping up ballast and track fills them with a great deal of trepidation. And what I'm going to aim to show here is that I can insert a crossover like this into a pre-existing scenic layout without too much fuss. And really, in my mind, the only thing which is going to be a potential issue is that the ballast is going to look quite different, because I used sand when I ballasted the rest of it, and I've got granite chipping, so I'm going to mix a bit of sand in with the granite chippings when I get to that stage. But what you see here now is a couple of salvaged points from Trinity Road, and when I scrapped Trinity Road I bought a lot of second-hand track bundles to be able to build up here without actually stripping apart Trinity Road too quickly. So actually I've ended up with probably about 10 or so spare points, and I've selected 2 from those which I'm actually going to use for this. Now this one here is fully electrofrog and is a comparatively new point. It's probably only about 10 years old. So you can see there those gaps. I'm going to make sure that they're fully gapped, and then this will give me some fault-free operation on DCC, and I'm going to use the frog change on that DCC Concepts ADS unit to change and work the frog polarity on this. So I think that's going to be pretty good. The other point that I've got here, this is actually an Insul frog point. I don't have any more electrofrog points for left hand, only right hand unfortunately, and I can't use a right hand in this position. So I think that's going to be okay, and what I'm going to do with this is these two will match up so they both change as a pair, and it will allow these 2 lines to be used almost like a passing loop. Now the way that I'm going to drop into the existing track is I'm actually going to use a Dremel. I will very, very carefully mark up. And actually, as luck would have it, the end of this point has fallen right where there's a track join anyway. So I'm going to just make sure that this fits in with that track join. I'll cut at the other end. And then I'm going to cut in as well over here. I've checked underneath and we don't have any cross members. So what I've actually got, again as well, salvaged from Bolton Trinity Road, I've got a box of old Pico PL10 type point motors, and these were running perfectly happily out there, and they do tend to be fairly bulletproof. It's looking a bit grubby, but it's going to be pretty easy to actually use these two motors with these 2 points and wire them back to a spare channel on the ADS unit. This particular one, I've been able to cut quite cleanly some of the old wires off. I'm going to finish cleaning that up, and I'm actually going to use one of those wiring looms from Rails Connect, because I think it's a perfect opportunity to use that and just really plug and go, no soldering whatsoever. With this one, it came off the layout with a chunk of wire, so I'm actually going to just reuse this wire. Waste not, want not. I don't need all of it. I'll just trim it back to probably about here, where it'll go into a chock block that will combine it with the wires from here, and then in turn that's going to go back to the ADS unit. My next job will be quite simply deciding where these points are going to be, and I will very, very carefully with a black marker, you want something like a permanent marker so it doesn't accidentally wipe off, I'm going to mark very, very carefully where I'm going to cut these tracks, because I want these points to just be a drop fit in. I don't want to be taking up yards and yards of track. I just want to be able to drop them in, very carefully slide some rail joiners across and be ready to go. I don't want to damage any of this track over here. I can see here that we've got some droppers very, very handily in the right place, and I'm going to use those to give me a break into the actual track bus, and that should mean that I can power things like the Frog from the track bus here very, very easily, and also put in some extra droppers because what I don't want is the point to effectively create an insulated piece that disrupts power to this area around here. So I will put in some extra droppers probably here and here. I'll put one in here, and I'll probably need one here and somewhere over here as well, and that'll just make sure that we don't introduce any inadvertent dead spots. So just very quickly marked out, I actually scratched into the rails with a screwdriver head, and I just found that that was an easier way of doing it. I'm just going to add some water just where I'm going to be cutting. There's some more marks here, and the reason for this is just to try and contain some of the dust when I do the cutting, and then just check once more that we can still see our marks. That's fine. So we just cut through the rails where we're going to be removing these bits in between. What I want to do now, you want to make sure any of the track pins are pulled out in these sections that need to go. So there's one, let's pull that out. Down here, have we got any? And one of the other functions that the water has been serving is it's just softening the glue. And I'm going to paint a little bit more water onto the track that's going to go, just to help try and soften some of this ballast. And we'll use a scraper as well to clear out some of this surplus ballast. And just for the time being, I'm going to very carefully just cut in, and I think that, yeah, the ballast is actually softened up quite nicely. You can see there. Just cut in, and I'm just going to transfer some of this to the bin as we go, just keeping the work area nice and clean. And try and just get in underneath some of this. Now, this is where we find any hidden droppers or just stubborn little bits. Just keep working some water in. Now you could use water from the kettle. That always works really well because the hot water works so much faster to just get in there and start to attack the glue. Well, it doesn't really attack it, it just kind of softens it up. So if needs be, we can always get out our persuader. It does feel very well in there, but there we go. And we'll just remove that piece of rail. But I'm going to continue doing this, and then I'm going to come back and show you progress. So I've got the area cleared, and we scrape back down to the baseboard. Baseboard looks manky just because it's had the dye from the glue for the ballast, but I've got a reasonably flat area, and here are the points, and these will just be a drop-in fit, as you can see there. Just going to have to tidy up a little bit on the ends there where I had to cut off fish plates. I'll just use a soldering iron to heat them up and then force off the last little bits of the fish plates. And then I just need to cut a very short length of rail to go in there. I'll just put 2 sleepers and cut to the right length 2 small pieces of rail, and they will all just go in quite nicely. And then it'll just simply be a case of making sure that everything lines up. I'm going to have to cut out the holes where the point motors are going to go. Again, I'll do that with the Dremel. And one thing that is quite apparent is there's a bit of a twist in the rail through here, so I'm going to have to be doubly careful. Got to cut a little bit out there just for the tie bar to have enough throw. But this should actually be fairly straightforward. So I'm just going to get on and mark out where I need to cut the holes, cut them all the way through, line up, make sure that the point motors fit in situ, and then it's just a case of just working back. I've got to cut some of the rail ties just to make sure that I can then slide a fish plate on, put the track down, and then slide it back, and then we've got something just to hold the track in place. And actually with some of these I probably will then just solder them just to make sure that everything stays where it should. Right, so we've got the hole now in place, and just going to line up the point again. That seems just fine in there. A little bit of tidying up to do, but that's okay. And what I will do is I'm going to put a piece of thin paper between the point and the point motor, and that'll just cover this hole, such that when we come to ballast, we're not going to end up with a lot of stuff just disappearing down into the underworld. Now I'm going to cut the hole for the next point, and then I'll come back and show you how it's going. First point is in. I just need to slide some card underneath just to finish off that hole. I'm going to fasten it down with some track pins. I know some people really don't like track pins, but it's the way I do things. I'm happy with it, and that'll just keep this firm. Then we've got to still cut this hole. I haven't done that yet. I just really wanted to make sure that this fitted. Just had to trim a little bit of sleeper there, but actually all in all it's gone in quite well with the motor attached there. So that's our first point done. And I've just been digging out some insulated rail joiners. So we've got 2 of those is all I've got left. It's all I need just to, in fact, actually thinking about it, I only need 1 insulating rail joiner. So boom, even better. Fitting the fish plates is actually surprisingly easy, and as you can see by carefully measuring where I need to cut, then we've really just made life so much easier for ourselves. Well, it's progressed really nicely. There's a lot of hard work gone into lining these up, particularly this little bit just in the middle there, and I'm going to have to do some soldering, but I do also need a dropper wire for the frog going down there. That's not a problem. And I've got these on, and I'm just going to cut a length of card just to slip underneath around this point motor, just to stop the ballast from falling through. I've already done this one here, and I'm just using a backing card from a product that I used in a previous video. So just cut a length of card off, and we don't really need to be too bothered about the colour on this. It's going to be well and truly hidden by the ballast. So I'm just going to cut out a piece that will go on the front. That's going to go right through, and then I'm going to cut another piece that we'll just do at the back. One more little piece there. That's going to go in, I'm going to put this underneath here. That's going to give some degree of protection. And there we have it. Now all that's left to do is do a roll through for some wagons. So I've got some wagons here. And just let gravity take them through. Now that's interesting. Coming up, they're derailing. I think there's a bit of a twist creeping in. So I'm just going to use a piece of redundant sleeper underneath there, and this is rough and ready. It'll disappear under the ballast. The ballast glue will just hold everything secure. I'm going to just put one more piece at the back just under here. Now let's just see what happens. Now that's getting through there just fine. By the looks of it, this bit here I need to sort out. That's not a problem. So what I'm going to do there is just do a little bit of soldering to make sure that that piece of rail lines up as it should. It seems a little bit better. And there we have it, and I can just tidy some of that up with a file. And there we go, the crossing is installed. We'll just now move on to wiring and getting those point motors to work. Once I've got all the dropper wires in and I'm happy with that and everything is working and tested and double checked, then it'll just be up to final ballasting. So I've got the points wired in. I haven't done any of the droppers yet, but just on the NCE, I've programmed it for accessory 48. And if I press 1, select accessory 2, select accessory 1, and it definitely works just fine. So that's really good news. I've got that onto a spare ADS channel underneath. It's actually been really easy to wire, and I've used those Rail Connect wiring looms that I had left over from a review. So it's really come together quite well. I've drilled the holes ready for some droppers, and I'm just going to get on now. And I need the wires going just to make sure that I've got electrical continuity, and also to the frog as well. That's really important, and then we should be in a position where we can start the ballasting. Right, I've got all of the electrics in. So what I've done is I've now chosen a locomotive which actually has short out protection. It's actually got a DCC Concepts Zen Buddha in, which if it detects a short, it doesn't blow the decoder. So it's actually quite a good one to test with. So I'm just going to run it forward nice and slowly. So we're going over the point work, and we're going through there. There's a little chirp, and that's the insel frog point. It's one of the pains of using insel frog points on DCC, but I can do some work to try and sort that out. So let's just change the point direction, and let's just bring the train back. And of course on the main line we've got the electrofrog point, which means that we don't have the same problems. And just run it forwards again. And change the points. And let's try reversing at speed. And yeah, that's working just fine. So moving on to ballasting next, now that I'm happy that everything is working through the point work. And then we just leave that ballasting to dry. And I'm going to just fill some of this area here. You don't have to be too neat. So you can see we've got the rough set out ballast there, and then you just start brushing the sand along. And you can be quite firm but fair with this. But then what I start to do is very carefully start dripping it in just along the edges of the rail. And you'll see capillary action starts to soak it into the sand. Now you don't want to put it out too fast because the flow of the glue will wash the sand out of the way, and you really don't want that. We'll come back now. It's the following day, and the ballast is all set pretty nice. And well, I've done a bit of darkening with it insofar as I added some fine sieved real ash from a fire, just to mix in with the ballast so it didn't look glaringly new. I also mixed in a bit of that very dark, almost black fine turf from the Woodland Scenics range, but for my liking it's still far too clean. And the best way that we can address this is to actually get, I've had a rummage through my paint stash, and I've got some black gloss paint. Now the fact that it's gloss, it should be alright because I'm going to thin this right down. But I just wanted an oil-based paint, and what I'm going to do is just make this all slightly grotty by taking, this is the last of the white spirit actually here. I just clean my paint brushes and then I seal this up with another cup placed inside. It's just one of those disposable plastic cups, so that I can be quite economical with the white spirit. But this also makes a really great medium for painting onto track to weather it. Now what I need to do is obviously have quite a bit more, so I've got some white spirit, and I'm just going to top that off. And I've got myself quite a large-ish brush. You can see there it's about the width of the track. I use it. That brush size actually is one of the most useful sizes that there is. I'm actually going to turn the layout off. I just realised I've put a metal tin on the track. Luckily it didn't short out. But let's not tempt things. Right, so the paint in here looks, just needs a little bit of a stir. Now we're not painting this straight onto the layout, because that would be just way too much. Instead, we've got the little pot of the white spirit. What I'm going to do is just clean some of that off and straight in there. And just going to mix that in. Could probably actually do with quite a bit of paint thinned down. So let's try not to make too much of a mess. And the aim of this is just to make a dirty black wash. Well, I think one more, just a little bit of the black, mix that in. So that is effectively really quite thinned down paint. First of all, actually, just need to make sure that there's no raw paint, as it were, in the bristles. So just mixing that out. And it still needs more. And now we're getting that wash that blends the ballast in. So just dirtying down this ballast, and we'll go over some of the surrounding ballast as well, just to blend it all in, to get that oily, dirty, horrible effect of older used ballast where lots of trains have been passing over. And this isn't a job for being neat. One of the other good things about this is it will also put a thin layer of paint on the side of the rails, just weathering them down slightly. And this is a job for pretty much just before I'll close down the loft up here and head off to bed, because I don't really want all the fumes around me whilst I'm doing something else. So this is a last thing at night job. You can see there it is just toning that ballast down quite nicely. And I always save the dirty brush cleaning fluid from when I'm painting things for doing stuff like this, because waste not, want not. It's effectively you'd only be chucking it away, so I might use it for some pretty good scenic effects. I mean, you can also use this for grubbying up buildings and all sorts, but you've just got to find your feet with it. What you got to make sure is don't go overboard. Be conservative when you start and just experiment a little bit. That's always the best way of doing it. You can see that it's blended that new angry looking ballast into the actual the rest of the ballast. And you can go over all of your ballast if you want, some of it, a little bit. I just find that this is a great way of toning different batches of ballast together. So I'm going to leave this now to set. There are quite a lot of fumes up here. I'm going to turn the extractor fan on, but obviously that drowns out the camera. So we'll come back to this when it's all set and done. I'm really pleased with the end result. It's turned out reasonably well. That black wash has really toned down that ballast, and it's a great tip for anybody who has joins between different ballasting sessions, that you can just use a dirty black wash just to tone things down. Everything works reliably. I've had trains running through this all day with no issues and absolutely no derailment, so I'm really pleased with this effect. It's a great way to be able to just insert extra track work into your layout, even after you've finished the scenic side of things. So don't despair if you look at your layout and think, you know what, I could have done with a crossover there or an extra piece of track here, because you can quite easily just insert that if you follow some of the simple guides that I've done today in this video. Well, I hope you really enjoyed that video, and actually it was great fun to do. Don't forget as well that you can like this video, share it too, let other people know about the project work we've been doing here, and subscribe to the channel. It's really important to ring that bell and pick all notifications to be the first to know about new videos as and when they go up. But until next time, this is me, Johnny Kirk, saying you take great care of yourself. Happy modelling. Bye for now. I'd like to send out a huge thanks to everybody who supports me on Patreon, and an extra special huge thanks goes out to Anthony Kidson, Offshore Allen, oorail.co.uk, Michael Lockie, Helen Sink, Peter Bolton, Brian and Dorothy Mudd, Gary Lewis, David Quinn, Sparky107107, George Botterini, Chris Moss, Robert Steers, MD of San Juan Model Company and Grantline Products, Sam Yates, Dale Williams, John N. from NC, NYMRish, Jonathan Foster, Peter, Graham Foster, Clifford Ison, Larry W. Grant, NI Railways 4000 class, Ian Coulson, and Alan Dickerson. Thank you. Without you guys, I couldn't do this.